A lot of people will think that massive deployment we saw in Ekiti, in Osun State, in Anambra State, Edo and Ondo, and we saw several national commissioners being deployed. We saw other recs from other states coming on ground to assist in those states. But you do not have that luxury at the general elections. And that's one fear a lot of Nigerians will have, that the way you went about those target elections, you cannot use that same template for the general elections. How prepared in terms of resources that you have on ground for 2015? You cannot use that same template for the general elections. How prepared in terms of resources that you have on ground for 2015?
Yeah, thank you. There are two aspects to that question. Now, for the staff of INEC, who took part in those recent elections, the deployment is actually more to provide opportunities for learning for those staff. It's not necessarily because that number of INEC staff were needed. But since we had isolated elections, we need to have people on the field observing how it works and seeing what lessons they can take away from the elections, and that is what you have. We will not be in a position to deploy more than a rec to a state, for instance, in 2015. That is the case. But we did it in 2011, and we pulled it off. And now we have had 4 years to prepare since 2011. There's no reason why we shouldn't pull it off very comfortably. Now, as regards the deployment of the security forces, again, it is a question of making hay while the sun shines. Now, the security challenge in the states across the country are not the same. We have the Interconsultative Committee on Election Security that maps its operational order based on the peculiar security challenge of a state in point. And what you had in the previous elections where you had massive deployment is simply because the elections were isolated elections. The manpower, the security manpower was available. The state, if you like, had some history of volatility, and so there's nothing to be lost in making sure that those security personnel were on ground. Now, that is not to say the elections were militarized, and I want to make that point because you alluded to it. There's been much talk about militarization. There was no militarization. Neither in Osun nor in Ekiti did you find any policeman at the polling units that was armed. There was no armed personnel. The armed people that you had on ground were nowhere near the polling units. They were in the shadows. And they were there just in case they were needed. And they were not needed. And so there was no militarization. And we believe that in 2015, we will not, of course, the states where there are security challenges, there will be deployment to match that kind of challenge. But in states where you don't have the challenges, you won't need that kind of deployment. All right.
Kayode, thank you. Still stay on with us because we still have issues relating to elections and, of course, 2015 that we'll be talking about. Now, let's move into the issue of impeachments. We saw quite a few of some of those that drew attention of most Nigerians. Some of the things that we saw is how the former governor of Adamawa State, Murtala Nyako, was removed. The deputy governor of Enugu State also was removed. The Nigerian constitution is clear on the issues of impeachment. Mr. Oguye, let me start by asking you on this. Do you think this year politicians have played the impeachment card according to the rules?
Largely, not in accordance with the dictates of the Constitution. Now, the disposition of Nigerian politicians is the disposition of a typical powermonger who feels that the end will justify the means at the end of the day. And so they do everything possible to first attain power during electioneering. And then when they get to power, they also do everything possible, either to retain power or to bounce somebody out of power and put somebody else there. And so they are always in a hurry to violate the law. They don't see the restraints of law. Law has a restraining element. When you look to the law and you see that there are certain prohibitions, there are certain things that you are not supposed to do, that are not permissible, you then come to a realization that there are certain whims and caprices that you may have that you cannot actualize. But not so for a typical, an average Nigerian politician. And so in the impeachment that we saw, there was that hurry, there was that mad rush to attain a premeditated end. And even the one that didn't eventually occur in Taraba State, we all saw what happened, before political contestation and all the surrounding circumstances, shifted the balance of forces in favor of the incumbent. And so that impeachment plot just felt like a pack of cards. So we've not seen that. And I'm not hopeful that we're going to see that in the future, except something dramatic happens in the way Nigerian politicians think, in their orientation, in their perception of power. How do they see power? Is it a trust to serve the people or a weapon to misrule the people?
Mr. Energy, let me ask you, the issue of impeachment is largely legal, and to some percentage is mathematical, because it has to do with numbers. But we've seen that being defeated. Legally, we've seen that at some point, legal process is not followed. And again, the issues of numbers are also demystified according to what the law provides. What's your take on the way impeachments have gone in the past few months in this year?
I think the issue of impeachment has to do with the culture of impunity, which has unfortunately taken root in our climb. That might is right. You put the person at a position of disadvantage, let him fight back, even if it is through the instrumentality of the law. And some people believe, okay, since they say that the law is an ass, then it must be an asshole, And the situation, therefore, is you get out, you fight from outside. Like the Igbo man will say, the man who has the yam will be cultivating the land, while the other person will be struggling over land. So you see, effective possession is that the man is already tilling the soil and putting the yam. So for passers-by, he's the owner of the farm. But the other one is saying, this is my land, this is my land. So you laying claim that you are the governor or this is your position. You are in court. And sometimes judicial process may not play out the way the expectation of the public, goes because of certain impediments. Don't forget that the guy who went to court may have designed a strategy to also delay the process, except where there are, timelines. And he will want the timeline to be exhausted. And if the other man is already in the place, he is using some of the resources to undo you. So the issue of impeachment, when it was signposted under the MPN, is it PRP period in Kaduna, that saw Balarabe Musa out, people thought that was going to be the last. We would have seen that kind of thing. But politicians learn more of the negative things. They never copy good things. They always look for ways to justify wrong things. After all, it's not only done in Nigeria. But you go out, you see that good roads are also available in other places. You are not saying, after all, good roads are up there. As politicians, we are supposed to make good roads here too. So, but it's only bad things that they justify, rationalize, and find reasons why those things must be perceived as not so as abnormal. Otherwise, how can a few people just in a particular, even when the courts have been so clear about what the law is about, interpreted this thing, but okay, they can even go, what the Supreme Court has said, they can go and ask the Federal High Court again. What was it that actually the Supreme Court said? By the time the court would throw it out, it would have taken 3 months or more. He has gained time. Then he goes on appeal. Time is going. You understand? So it's also this culture of impunity that is at the root of the heat, the heated political environment. It brings chicanery, it brings shenanigans, it brings all sorts of political brickmanship.
And the implications, I guess, are dire.
Exactly.
Because,
very dire.
For example, when we see 7 people impeach 19 people,
well, you see,
and the 19 people say, we impeach you too, we remove you too, we suspend you.
The only thing now is
the
one that has the capacity to sustain, to sustain the position. You know, as well as I do, that it is no longer who is right, but who can sustain. For example, if the other people impeaching the speaker, for example, for the governor, the House has no opportunity to do anything other than to toe the line of the governor, because he's the one that dispenses the largesse. If the other one is he allies himself with the federal might, then both the governor and his house are swept to one side, while the minority is on the stronger side. So it is not good to flout the law flagrantly and deliberately.
And that's what we have seen.
Because you know you can, sustain the breach.
All right.
It's not good.
Thank you, Mr. Energy. We've seen that happen. So much we saw in 2000, between 2009 and 2011. We saw a lot of that happen, and again we are seeing it happen again.
And it will happen again.
And it looks like it happens when we are approaching an election year.
Because some people will allow you, since they cannot stop you being elected, they use that instrument to achieve what they couldn't achieve through the ballot box.
All right. Well, we'll take a short break. Those are some of the dramas that are played at Mr. G.T. Ogunye and Mr. Chima Enaj. Of course, Kayode Idowu is standing by. And when we return, so much happened this year when politicians dump their parties for another that takes our attention when we return. Stay with us.